Ralph Waldo Emerson ushered in the controversial transcendentalist movement in America. One of America's greatest thinkers, writers, lecturers, Emerson extended his Unitarian and Quaker roots, blended them with travel, philosophical discourse, and the academics of Divinity School, and emerged as a free thinker convinced of the divine nature and actualization of each and every soul. This rendition of Nature, one of Emerson's most well-known essays, embodies his belief in the interconnectedness of all creation and the power of the individual. Our age is retrospective. The foregoing generations beheld God and nature face to face. We through their eyes. Why should not we also enjoy an original relation to the universe? Why should not we have a poetry and philosophy of insight and not of tradition, and a religion by revelation to us, and not the history of theirs? The sun shines today also. Whatever curiosity the order of things has awakened in our minds, the order of things can satisfy. We are now so far from the road to truth that religious teachers dispute and hate each other, and speculative persons are esteemed unsound and frivolous. But to a sound judgment, the most abstract truth is the most practical. Nature, in the common sense, refers to essences unchanged by humankind. Space, the air, the river, the leaf. Art is applied to the mixture of will with the same thing, as in a house, a canal, a statue, a picture. To go into solitude, a person needs to retire as much from their chamber as from society. I am not solitary whilst I read and write, though nobody is with me. But if a person would be alone, let them look at the stars. The rays that come from those heavenly worlds will separate between them and what they touch. One might think the atmosphere was made transparent with this design, to give humankind in the heavenly bodies the perpetual presence of the sublime. Seen in the streets of cities, how great they are! If the stars should appear one night in 1,000 years, how would people believe and adore, and preserve for many generations the remembrance of the city of God which had been shown? But every night come out these envoys of beauty, and light the universe with their admonishing smile. The stars awaken a certain reverence, because, though always present, they are inaccessible. But all natural objects make a kindred impression when the mind is open to their influence. There is a property in the horizon which no one has but the one whose eye can integrate all the parts. That is, the poet. To speak truly, few adult persons can see nature. Most persons do not see the sun. At least they have a very superficial seeing. The sun illuminates only the eye of the adult, but shines into the eye and the heart of the child. The lover of nature has retained the spirit of infancy even into the era of adulthood. Intercourse with heaven and earth becomes part of their daily food. In the presence of nature, a wild delight runs through the adult, in spite of real sorrows. Nature says, "This is my creature, and meager all their impertinent griefs, they shall be glad with me. Not the sun or the summer alone, but every hour and season yields its tribute of delight. For every hour and change corresponds to and authorizes a different state of the mind, from breathless noon to grimmest midnight. In good health, the air is a cordial of incredible virtue. Crossing a bare common, in puddles, at twilight, under a clouded sky, without having in my thoughts any occurrence of special good fortune, I have enjoyed a perfect exhilaration. I am glad to the brink of fear. In the woods, too, a person casts off their years as the snake its slough. And at what period soever of life is always a child. In the woods is perpetual youth. Within these plantations of God, a decorum and sanctity reign. A perennial festival is dressed, and the guest sees not how they should tire of them in 1,000 years. In the woods, we return to reason and faith. There I feel that nothing can befall me in life, no disgrace, no calamity, which nature cannot repair. Standing on the bare ground, my head bathed by the blithe air and uplifted into infinite space, all mean egotism vanishes. I am nothing. I see all. The currents of the universal being circulate through me. I am part or particle of God. The waving of the boughs in the storm is new to me and old. It takes me by surprise, and yet is not unknown. Its effect is like that of a higher thought or a better emotion coming over me, when I deemed I was thinking justly or doing right. Yet, nature is not always tricked in holiday attire. But the same scene which yesterday breathed perfume and glittered as for the frolic of the nymphs is overspread with melancholy today. Nature always wears the colors of the spirit. Nature, in its ministry to people, is not only the material, but is also the process and the result. The wind sows the seed. The sun evaporates the sea. The wind blows the vapor to the field. The ice on the other side of the planet condenses rain on this. The rain feeds the plant feeds the animal, and thus the endless circulations of the divine charity nourish people. Cosmos. Beauty. The primary forms, as the sky, the mountain, the tree, the animal, give us delight in and for themselves. A pleasure arising from outline, color, motion, and grouping. The eye is the best of artists. As the eye is the best composer, so light is the first of painters. To the body and mind which have been cramped by noxious work or company, nature is medicinal and restores their tone. The trader, the attorney, comes out of the din and craft of the street and sees the sky and the woods and is whole again. In their eternal calm, they find themselves. The health of the eye seems to demand a horizon. We are never tired as long as we can see far enough. From the earth as a shore, I look out into that silent sea. I seem to partake its rapid transformations. The active enchantment reaches my dust, and I dilate and conspire with the morning wind. How does nature deify us with the few and cheap elements? Give me health and a day, and I will make the pomp of emperors ridiculous. To the attentive eye, each moment of the year has its own beauty, and in the same field it beholds every hour a picture which was never seen before, and which shall never be seen again. The heavens change every moment, and reflect their gloom or glory on the plains beneath. The tribes of birds and insects, like the plants punctual to their time, follow each other, and the year has room for all. The shows of day, the dewy morning, the rainbow, the mountains, orchards in blossom, stars, moonlight, shadows in still water, and the like, if too eagerly hunted, become shows merely, and mock us with their unreality. Go out of the house to see the moon, and it is mere tinsel. It will not please as when its light shines upon your necessary journey. The spiritual element is essential to its perfection. The high and divine beauty is the mark God sets upon virtue. Every natural action is graceful. Every heroic act is also decent and causes the place and the bystanders to shine. We are taught by great actions that the universe is the property of every individual in it. Every rational creature has all nature for their dowry and estate. It is theirs if they will. In private places, among sordid objects, an act of truth or heroism seems at once to draw to itself the sky as its temple, the sun as its candle. The intellect searches out the absolute order of things as they stand in the mind of God, and without the colors of affection. Therefore does beauty, which in relation to actions, come unsought. And comes because it is unsought. Remains for the apprehension and pursuit of the intellect. And then again, in its turn, of the active power. Nothing divine dies. All good is eternally reproductive. The beauty of nature reforms itself in the mind, and not for barren contemplation, but for new creation. All people are in some degree impressed by the face of the world. Some people, not content with admiring, seek to embody it in new forms. The creation of beauty is art, the expression of nature in miniature. Nature is a sea of forms radically alike and even unique. Perfectness and harmony. Beauty. The standard of beauty is the entire circuit of natural forms, the totality of nature. Nothing is quite beautiful alone. A single object is only so far beautiful as it suggests this universal grace. The poet, the painter, the sculptor, the musician, the architect seek each to concentrate this radiance of the world on one point, and each in their several works to satisfy the love of beauty which stimulates them to produce. No reason can be asked or given why the soul seeks beauty. Beauty, in its largest and profoundest sense, is one expression for the universe. God is the all-fair. Truth and goodness and beauty are but different faces of the same all. But beauty in nature is not ultimate. It is the herald of inward and eternal beauty, and is not alone a solid and satisfactory good. It must stand as a part. Nature is the symbol of spirit. Every natural fact is a symbol of some spiritual fact. Every appearance in nature corresponds to some state of the mind. That state of the mind can only be described by presenting that natural appearance as its picture. An enraged person is a lion. A cunning person is a fox. A firm person is a rock. A learned one is a torch. A lamb is innocence. A snake is subtle spite. Flowers express to us the delicate affection. Light and darkness are our familiar expression for knowledge and ignorance, and heat for love. Visible distance behind and before us, memory and hope. Who looks upon a river in a meditative hour and is not reminded of the flux of all things? Throw a stone into the stream, and the circles that propagate themselves are the beautiful type of all influence. Humankind is conscious of a universal soul within or behind the individual life, wherein, as in a firmament, the natures of justice, truth, love, freedom arise and shine. This universal soul they call reason. And the blue sky in which the private earth is buried, the sky with its eternal calm and full of everlasting orbs, is the type of reason. That which, intellectually considered, we call reason, considered in relation to nature, we call spirit. Spirit is the creator. spirit hath life in itself. We know more from nature than we can at will communicate. A leaf, a drop, a crystal, a moment of time is related to the whole and partakes of the perfection of the whole. Each particle is a microcosm and faithfully renders the likeness of the world. Every universal truth which we express in words implies or supposes every other truth. An action is the perfection and publication of thought. A right action seems to fill the eye and to be related to all nature. Nature is made to conspire with spirit, to emancipate us. The least change in our point of view gives the whole world a pictorial air. Hence arises a pleasure mixed with awe. I may say a low degree of the sublime is felt from the fact, probably, that people are hereby apprised that whilst the world is a spectacle, something in themselves is stable. By a few strokes the poet delineates, as on air, the sun, the mountain, the camp, the city, the hero, the heroine, not different from what we know them, but only lifted from the ground and afloat before the eye. The poet unfixes the land and the sea, makes them revolve around the axis of their primary thought, and disposes them anew. The sensual person conforms thoughts to things. The poet conforms things to their thoughts. Whilst thus the poets animate nature with their own thoughts, they differ from the philosopher only herein, that the one proposes beauty as the main end, the other truth. But the philosopher, not less than the poet, postpones the apparent order and relations of things to the empire of thought. The true philosopher and the true poet are one, and a beauty, which is truth, and a truth, which is beauty, is the aim of both. A spiritual life has been imparted to nature, that the solid seeming block of matter has been pervaded and dissolved by a thought, that this feeble human being has penetrated the vast masses of nature with an informing soul and recognized itself in their harmony. All people are capable of being raised by piety or by passion into their region, and no person touches these divine natures without becoming, in some degree, divine themselves. Like a new soul, they renew the body. We become physically nimble and lightsome. We tread on air. Life is no longer irksome, and we think it will never be so. No person fears age or misfortune or death in their serene company, for they are transported out of the district of change. Whilst we behold unveiled the nature of justice and truth, we learn the difference between the absolute and the conditional or relative. We apprehend the absolute. As it were, for the first time, we exist. We become immortal, for we learn that time and space are relations of matter, that with a perception of truth, of a virtuous will, they have no affinity. Religion and ethics, which may be fitly called the practice of ideas or the introduction of ideas into life, degrade nature and suggest its dependence on spirit. Ethics and religion differ herein, that the one is the system of human duties commencing from mankind, the other from God. They both put nature underfoot. The first and last lesson of religion is, the things that are seen are temporal. The things that are unseen are eternal. It puts an affront upon nature. It appears that motion, poetry, physical and intellectual science, and religion all tend to affect our convictions of the reality of the external world. But I own there is something ungrateful in expanding too curiously the particulars of the general proposition, that all culture tends to imbue us with idealism. Children, it is true, believe in the external world. The belief that it appears only is an afterthought. But with culture, this faith will as surely arise on the mind as did the first. Seen in the light of thought, the world always is phenomenal, and virtue subordinates it to the mind. Idealism sees the world in God. It beholds the whole circle of persons and things, of actions and events, of country and religion, not as painfully accumulated atom after atom, act after act, in an aged, creeping past, but as one vast picture which God paints on the instant eternity for the contemplation of the soul. Therefore, the soul holds itself off from a too trivial and microscopic study of the universal tablet. It respects the end too much to immerse itself in the means. It accepts whatsoever befalls as a part of its lesson. It is a watcher more than a doer. And it is a doer only that it may better watch. The aspect of nature is devout. The happiest person is one who learns from nature the lesson of worship, of that ineffable essence which we call spirit. One that thinks most will say least. We can foresee God in the coarse and, as it were, distant phenomena of matter. But when we try to define and describe, both language and thought desert us, and we are as helpless as fools. Idealism saith, matter is a phenomenon, not a substance. Idealism does not satisfy the demands of the spirit. It leaves God out of me. It leaves me in the splendid labyrinth of my perceptions to wander without end. Whence is matter? And where to? Many truths arise to us out of the recesses of consciousness. We learn that the highest is present to the soul of humans, that the dread universal essence, which is not wisdom or love or beauty or power, but all in one and each entirely, is that for which all things exist, and that by which they are, that spirit creates. That behind nature, throughout nature, spirit is present. One and not compound, it does not act upon us from without. That is in space and time, but spiritually, or through ourselves. Therefore, that spirit, that is the supreme being, does not build up nature around us, but puts it forth through us. As the life of the tree puts forth new branches and leaves through the pores of the old. As a plant upon the earth, so a person rests upon the bosom of God. They are nourished by unfailing fountains and draws at their need inexhaustible power. Who can set bounds to the possibilities of people? Once inhale the upper air, being admitted to behold the absolute natures of justice and truth. And we learn that people have access to the entire mind of the Creator, are themselves the Creator in the finite. The world is a remoter and inferior incarnation of God, a projection of God in the unconscious. But it differs from the human body in one important respect. It is not, like that, now subjected to the human will. Its serene order is inviolable by us. It is, therefore, to us, the present expositor of the divine mind. It is a fixed point whereby we may measure our departure. As we degenerate, the contrast between us and our house is more evident. We are as much strangers in nature as we are aliens from God. We do not understand the notes of birds. The fox and the deer run away from us. The bear and tiger rend us. The highest reason is always the truest. That which seems faintly possible, it is so refined, is often faint and dim because it is deepest seated in the mind among the eternal verities. Empirical science is apt to cloud the sight, and by the very knowledge of functions and processes, to bereave the student of the contemplation of the whole. The savant becomes unpoetic. But the best-read naturalist, who lends an entire and devout attention to truth, will see that there remains much to learn of his relation to the world, and that it is not to be learned by any addition or subtraction or other comparison of known quantities, but is arrived at by untaught allies of the spirit, by a continual self-recovery, and by entire humility. A dream may let us deeper into the secret of nature than 100 concerted experiments. When I behold a rich landscape, it is less to my purpose to recite correctly the order and superposition of the strata than to know why all thought of multitude is lost in a tranquil sense of unity. I cannot greatly honor minuteness and details, so long as there is no hint to explain the relation between things and thoughts, no ray upon the metaphysics of conchology, of botany, of the arts, to show the relation of the forms of flowers, shells, animals, architecture to the mind, and build science upon ideas. A person applies to nature but half their force. They work on the world with their understanding alone. Meantime, in the thick darkness, there are not wanting gleams of a better light, occasional examples of the action of people upon nature with their entire force, with reason as well as understanding. Such examples are the traditions of miracles in the earliest antiquity of all nations, the history of Jesus Christ, the achievements of a principle as in religious and political revolutions and in the abolition of the slave trade, the miracles of enthusiasm as those reported of Swedenborg, Hohenlohe, and the Shakers, many obscure and yet contested facts now arranged under the name of animal magnetism, prayer, eloquence, self-healing, and the wisdom of children. The problem of restoring to the world original and eternal beauty is solved by the redemption of the soul. The ruin or the blank, that we see when we look at nature is in our own eye. The axis of vision is not coincident with the axis of things, and so they appear not transparent but opaque. The reason why the world lacks unity and lies broken and in heaps is because people are disunited with themselves. People cannot be naturalists until they satisfy all the demands of the spirit. Love is as much its demand as perception. Indeed, neither can be perfect without the other. In the uttermost meaning of the words, thought is devout, and devotion is thought. Deep calls unto deep. Is not prayer also a study of truth? A sally of the soul into the unfound infinite. No person ever prayed heartily without learning something. But when a faithful thinker, resolute to detach every object from personal relations and see it in the light of thought, shall at the same time kindle science with the fire of the holiest affections, then will God go forth anew into the creation. The invariable mark of wisdom is to see the miraculous in the common. What is a day? What is a year? What is summer? What is a child? What is sleep? To our blindness, these things seem unaffecting. We make fables to hide the baldness of the fact and conform it, as we say, to the higher law of the mind. But when the fact is seen under the light of an idea, the gaudy fable fades and shrivels. We behold the real higher law. To the wise, therefore, a fact is true poetry and the most beautiful of fables. These wonders are brought to our own door. Social life, poverty, labor, sleep, fear, fortune are known to you. Learn that none of these things is superficial, but that each phenomenon has its roots in the faculties and affections of the mind. So shall we come to look at the world with new eyes. It shall answer the endless inquiry of the intellect, what is truth, and of the affections, what is good, by yielding itself passive to the educated will. Then shall come to pass what my poet said. Nature is not fixed but fluid. Spirit alters, molds, makes it. The immobility or bruteness of nature is the absence of spirit. To pure spirit it is fluid, it is volatile, it is obedient. Every spirit builds itself a house, and beyond its house a world, and beyond its world a heaven. Know then that the world exists for you. For you is the phenomenon perfect. What we are, that only can we see. All that Adam had, all that Caesar could, you have and can do. Adam called his house heaven and earth. Caesar called his house Rome. You perhaps call yours a cobbler's trade, 100 acres of plowed land, or a scholar's garret. Yet line for line and point for point, your dominion is as great as theirs, though without fine names. Build, therefore, your own world. As fast as you conform your life to the pure idea in your mind, that will unfold its great proportions. A correspondent revolution in things will attend the influx of the spirit. So fast will disagreeable appearances, swine, spiders, snakes, pests, madhouses, prisons, enemies vanish. They are temporary and shall be seen no more. The sordor and filths of nature the sun shall dry up, and the wind exhale. As when the summer comes from the south, the snowbanks melt, and the face of the earth becomes green before it, so shall the advancing spirit create its ornaments along its path, and carry with it the beauty it visits, and the song which enchants it. It shall draw beautiful faces, warm hearts, wise discourse, and heroic acts around its way, until evil no more is seen. The realm of person over nature, which cometh not with observation, a dominion such as now is beyond their dream of God, they shall enter without more wonder than the blind person feels who is gradually restored to perfect